Welcome to the Fairbury Public Information Meeting being hosted by the Nebraska Department of Transportation, also referred to as NDOT. The purpose of this meeting is to share information about the proposed design and solicit public comments for the NDOT project in Fairbury, including planned improvements and safety benefits, the anticipated construction timeline dependent on receiving congressionally directed spending, and gathering feedback from the public on the information presented. We want to hear your comments and input specifically on the proposed improvements, the planned pedestrian crossing, as well as comments related to potential impacts resulting from the project and/or construction. Details on how to comment are provided later in the presentation. Identified as in Fairbury, the proposed project would repair approximately 0.4 miles of concrete pavement along US 136, starting just west of the viaduct over the Union Pacific Railroad and extending east to just beyond the intersections of US 136 and Tilden Street. No work should be done on the railroad viaduct. It would also reconstruct approximately 1.2 miles of US 136 as a 3-lane roadway starting just east of Tilden Street to just west of L Street. The 3-lane section would consist of a center 2-way left turn lane and an eastbound and westbound through lane. Construction may begin and/or end approximately 500 feet ahead of or beyond the actual project limits to accommodate transitioning the pavement. The purpose of the proposed project is to preserve the transportation asset, improve the reliability of the transportation system, and perpetuate the mobility of the traveling public. The need for this project is based on the current condition of the roadway. We are now in the public engagement process, and we want to hear from you. Stakeholder meetings were held this week with a cross-section of Fairbury representatives comprised of the public sector, civic organizations, businesses, and residents on US 136. The comments received are being evaluated as part of the design process. This public meeting is an important part of the project process. NDOT will evaluate and respond to all public comments received during the comment period, and the project design will be refined as appropriate prior to starting the right-of-way appraisal and acquisition process anticipated in early to mid-2026. The proposed project would require the acquisition of additional property rights, which could include new right-of-way, control of access, permanent easements, and/or temporary easements. If your property is impacted by this project, you will be contacted by an NDOT representative once the design footprint has been established. Final design and construction plans are anticipated to be completed by late 2026. Construction is dependent on receiving congressionally directed spending, or CDS. If CDS is received, construction could begin as early as spring of 2027, with completion anticipated by winter of 2027. US 136 would be reconstructed and reconfigured through Fairbury. A roadway reconfiguration is also known as right-sizing the roadway. It reconfigures travel lanes to provide space for other needs. Currently a 4-lane highway through Fairbury, US 136 would be reconfigured to a 3-lane section with a center, 2-way left turn lane, and an eastbound and westbound through lane. Roadway reconfigurations offer several safety benefits. The addition of a left turn lane reduces the risk of rear-end collisions and provides better visibility for those turning left, as shown in the graphic on the screen. A single lane of traffic in one direction also makes it easier for those turning onto US 136 or traveling north or south to find a gap in traffic. Reconfiguring US 136 to 3 lanes provides space for the addition of sidewalks on both sides of the highway. It also reduces the distance pedestrians must travel to safely cross the highway. National studies performed by the Federal Highway Administration have found that roadway reconfiguration reduces crashes by up to 47%. Next, we'll be walking through the proposed improvements for US 136, beginning with the typical section. Typical sections are a cross-section or a driver's perspective when looking at the roadway. This slide illustrates the proposed roadway reconfiguration from the existing 4-lane section with a raised median to a more efficient 3-lane section. It includes a single lane in each direction with a dedicated 2-way center turn lane, which enhances traffic flow and safety for turning movements. There will be no shift to the existing highway centerline. The existing US 136 layout includes 2 travel lanes in each direction and a 15-foot raised median totaling 66 feet in width. The proposed redesign utilizes the existing roadway footprint while improving functionality. Importantly, this reconfiguration allows for the addition of sidewalks on both sides of the highway, along with an imprinted concrete buffer space, improving pedestrian accessibility and safety. The proposed design represents a more balanced use of space that provides safety benefits to both drivers and pedestrians. Next, let's walk through the detailed improvements for the reconstruction of US 136 beginning at the west end of the project. From Tilden Street to Elm Street, the roadway would be reconstructed on the existing alignment and reconfigured to be a 3-lane section with 1 lane in each direction and a center turn lane. Limits of new pavement are shown in gray. New sidewalks are shown in pink and would be constructed on both sides of the highway starting at Maple Street and extending east to L Street. Some properties with multiple access points onto US 136 would have driveways consolidated or removed. These locations are identified with an X on the map. Locations with limited visibility have been identified for driveway consolidation to improve sight distance. Consolidating direct access points onto US 136 also helps to minimize potential conflict points. East of Elm Street to west of D Street, the 3-lane section would continue on the existing alignment. New sidewalks would be added to both sides of the highway through this section. Intersections and driveway approaches would be reconstructed as needed. Storm sewer inlets throughout the corridor would be reconstructed to improve roadway drainage. East of D Street, the existing raised median would be removed to make room for the 3-lane sections and sidewalks on both sides of the highway. Between D Street and F Street, the US 136 vertical profile, or grade, would be raised approximately 18 inches at the intersection with E Street to meet current sight distance requirements. A new crosswalk between G Street and H Street would be installed. We will discuss the crosswalk in greater detail later in this presentation. From H Street to the junction with Nebraska Highway 15, referred to as N15, the existing raised median would be removed and the proposed 3-lane roadway would be constructed on the existing alignment. Sidewalks would be constructed along both sides of US 136. New raised medians are shown in red. Raised medians would be reconstructed on US 136 at the junctions with N15 to increase safety by separating conflicting traffic movements at the intersection. McNish Park borders the south side of the project between H Street and J Street. Minor right-of-way impacts are anticipated for culvert work. The park would remain open throughout construction. Section 4F of the U.S. Department of Transportation's Act of 1966 requires a federal agency to consider the effects of actions on publicly owned parks and recreational lands. NDOT anticipates the project will not adversely affect the activities, features, or attributes of the park. Public comments regarding the potential impacts to McNish Park are being accepted at this public meeting. The existing raised median along N15 would be removed to allow for the intersection of N15 and US 136 to be phased construction, building half of the roadway at a time. After the construction of the intersection, new raised medians shown in red would be constructed at the locations where the previous raised median had been removed. The project would reconstruct US 136 to the west side of L Street, where the roadway tapers down to meet the existing 2-lane roadway section. Project construction is dependent on receiving congressionally directed spending, or CDS. If CDS is received, construction could begin as early as spring of 2027, with completion anticipated by winter of 2027. During construction, traffic on US 136 and N15 would not be detoured. 1 lane of traffic in each direction would be maintained. Construction would be completed in 3 phases, 1 lane at a time, beginning on the south as shown in red. We'll share more about each phase of construction in the following slides. Not more than one of the following intersections would be closed at the same time: Maple Street, C Street, E Street, and H Street. Reconstruction would be limited to approximately 4 segments. Local vehicular and pedestrian traffic would be able to cross the highway at intersections not under construction. Access to businesses and residences would be maintained but may be limited at times. Phase 1 would construct the eastbound or south lane of US 136 and the adjacent sidewalk. 1 lane of traffic in each direction would utilize the existing westbound lanes. Temporary widening of the highway would occur to accommodate traffic where needed. Phase 2 would construct the center lane of US 136. Eastbound traffic would utilize the newly constructed eastbound lane. Westbound traffic would utilize the existing westbound lane. Temporary widening of the highway would occur to accommodate traffic where needed. Phase 3 would construct the westbound or north lanes of US 136 and the adjacent sidewalk. One lane of traffic in each direction would utilize the newly constructed eastbound and center lanes. There is an existing crosswalk on the west side of the G Street intersection. The City of Fairbury has reported that 8th Street is also a frequently used crossing. A mid-block crosswalk between G Street and 8th Street would be built with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon sign, referred to as an RRFB. The crosswalk signs, located on both sides of the street and in the center median, would have lights that flash when activated via a button. These flashing lights help to bring attention to look out for pedestrians in the crosswalk. This new mid-block crosswalk would still allow turning movements from the center lane of US 136 at both G Street and 8th Street. Let's wrap up by recapping the preliminary project schedule. Feedback received from the public comment period will be incorporated as appropriate as we advance to final design. Final design and construction plans are anticipated to be complete by late 2026. Construction is dependent on receiving congressionally directed spending, or CDS. If CDS is received, construction could begin as early as spring of 2027, with a completion anticipated by winter of 2027. NDOT wants to hear from you. There are multiple ways you can provide your comments and input. Visit the project webpage and submit a comment form at ndot.info/13476. By U.S. mail to Sarah Fisher, NDOT Public Involvement, P.O. Box 94759, Lincoln, Nebraska 68509-4759, or by email or phone to sarah.fisher@nebraska.gov. Phone number is 402-479-3832. All comments are requested by December 19, 2025, to be included in the project record. Thank you for your interest in the In Fairbury project.